Have you ever wondered? If you were born 1,000 years ago, no technology, no internet, no family connections, could you ever rise to power? Could a farmer's son become a high official in the royal court? In ancient times, being a government official wasn't just a job. It was a life mission. It was the only way to escape poverty, gain respect, and bring glory to your family. But what did it really take to make it? Let's step into history. In ancient empires like China, under the Han or Tang dynasties, or Vietnam under Jai Viet, society was ruled by strict systems. Power came either from your birth or from your ability to prove you were the best of the best. There were only two real ways to rise: through books or through battle. The scholar had to pass brutal exams. The warrior had to risk his life in war. Both roads were long, painful, and uncertain. In rural villages, young boys would start studying at age 5. They memorized ancient texts by candlelight. No toys, no breaks, just books and hope. Why? Because if one boy passed the exams, his whole family could rise. But if he failed, years of study could mean nothing. And for warriors, success meant surviving wars and doing something great enough for the king to notice. So, what exactly were these exams? What did students learn? What kind of training did a warrior need? Let's take a deeper look into the homes, the schools, and the battlefields of the ancient world. In ancient times, power wasn't inherited by everyone. For those not born into noble blood, there were two ways up: study hard or fight harder. Let's talk about the scholar first. To become an official in the empire, you had to pass a series of exams, known as the imperial examination system. It was long, ruthless, and designed to fail almost everyone. These tests weren't just about intelligence. They were a test of will, endurance, and memory. Candidates had to memorize entire books of Confucian philosophy. They wrote essays, analyzed policies, and composed poetry. Not for fun, but because your life depended on it. The exam could last 3 full days, locked inside a tiny cubicle with nothing but ink, paper, and your thoughts. No food service, no bathroom, just survival. Some students collapsed, some lost their minds, but for the lucky few who passed, everything changed. They could work for the emperor, gain titles, land, respect. Their families were lifted out of poverty. Their names were carved into history. Now, let's flip the page to the warrior. In times of war, courage was currency. A soldier who showed unmatched bravery or led troops to victory could be promoted. Sometimes they became generals. Sometimes they became legends. But unlike the scholar, a warrior's test wasn't on paper. It was on the battlefield. His answers? Blood and survival. Take Tran Hung Dao, a general from ancient Vietnam. He led a historic defense against Mongol invasions in the 13th century. Not because of birthright, but because of loyalty, strategy, and the trust he earned from the king. In China, a man like Yue Fei became a symbol of honor. He chose duty over comfort and was remembered for centuries. But no matter the path, scholar or warrior, all served one master, the emperor. And behind it all was a shared belief system, Confucianism. It taught loyalty, hierarchy, and devotion to country, to family, to tradition. Education wasn't just about knowledge, it was about moral character. That's why schools were built in perfect symmetry. That's why testing halls looked like military camps. That's why families prayed day and night for their sons' success. This wasn't just ambition. It was a matter of pride, of honor, of destiny. Some people rise quietly. Others rise in the fire of history. Throughout ancient times, certain moments, crises, invasions, revolts, forced empires to seek heroes. And in those moments, scholars and warriors had to step out of theory and into reality. Let's look at the scholars first. In peaceful times, they lived in silence, studying, writing, advising. But when crisis struck, the court turned to them for answers. What law should we pass? How do we stop rebellions? How do we feed a starving population? Only the most brilliant minds, those who passed the imperial exams, were trusted to answer. But even the most educated men faced danger. During the fall of the Tang dynasty, officials were executed for political mistakes. In Jai Viet, under the Lei dynasty, court scholars often had to choose between truth and survival. Now, turn to the battlefield. Invasions from the north, rebellions within the kingdom, floods, famine, all tested the limits of the empire. Warriors had to act, fast, decisively. One of the greatest turning points came in the 13th century, when the Mongol Empire tried to invade Vietnam. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. And each time, it was Tran Hung Dao, a general and nobleman, who led the resistance. He used clever strategies, guerrilla tactics. He united people across regions. Farmers, scholars, monks, all stood under one command. His words before battle became legend. If you must die, then die for your country. If you survive, live to serve it. This was a moment when the line between scholar and warrior disappeared. Leaders had to be both, wise and brave, strategic and loyal, calm in thought and ruthless in action. From this chaos, the definition of a true official changed. It was no longer about passing exams. It was about leadership in times of collapse, courage when the nation shook. These moments, rare, terrifying, unforgettable, reshaped not only careers, but history itself. Every great event leaves a mark, not just on history books, but on people's lives. After the wars, after the reforms, after the collapse and rebuilding, something changed in how people saw the idea of becoming an official. In the past, becoming a government official was about glory. It meant power, status, a new life for your family. But after generations of war and sacrifice, people started to see it differently. Being an official now meant responsibility, duty, pressure. Villagers whispered stories of young men who passed the exams, only to collapse from the stress of court life. Some refused appointments altogether. They chose a quiet life in the countryside over the weight of national politics. Others saw government service as the highest act of patriotism, but also the heaviest burden one could carry. The scholar's robe was no longer just a symbol of success. It was a reminder of everything you owed to your emperor, your family, your people. At the same time, something else was happening. Common people started to believe that education could truly change their fate. Schools popped up in villages. Parents sold land to hire tutors. Boys memorized poetry by moonlight. Some never left their hometowns. Others traveled for weeks just to reach a testing center. And even though most would fail, the dream lived on. The warrior class, too, began to shift. As peace returned, fewer people wanted to fight. Sons of generals studied instead of training with swords. War was no longer the only way to serve the country. And so, the image of the ideal official evolved. From a fighter, or even a genius, to someone wise, balanced, morally strong. Society began to value not just what a man could do, but who he was, his ethics, his discipline, his ability to remain calm in crisis. In this way, history didn't just shape the people, It was the people who reshaped what it meant to serve. Time passed, dynasties fell, new powers rose, but one thing remained: the dream. For centuries, the idea of becoming an official, through merit, knowledge, and service, became deeply rooted in the culture of East Asia. In Vietnam, in China, in Korea, the legacy of learning as a ladder never disappeared. The old examination halls may be silent now, the inkstones dry, the robes no longer worn, but the values live on. Respect for education, pride in service, honor in sacrifice. In modern Vietnam, schools are still named after legendary scholars. Statues of generals like Tran Hung Dao stand tall in city squares. Students burn incense before exams, praying for wisdom, just like their ancestors once did. Even the modern Vietnamese phrase, Vinh Quy Bai Tu, meaning return home in glory, comes from this tradition. When a man who passed the exams would ride back to his village, banners flying, drums beating, neighbors celebrating. The dream of social mobility through learning continues. In many families, there's still a quiet hope that through hard work, study, and good character, one can rise, just like in the old days. The lesson? Greatness is not inherited. It's earned. The officials who shaped nations were not always born powerful. They were born hungry, for knowledge, for justice, for purpose. And while the systems have changed, the heart of that dream still beats. Today's exams may be different. The emperors are gone. But the pursuit of wisdom, leadership, and moral strength remains deeply human. And those who understand that still carry the spirit of the scholar and the warrior. So now you know the story. A journey that spanned centuries, from village candlelight to palace gates, from ink-stained scrolls to battle-scarred swords. It's a story of ambition, struggle, sacrifice, and the eternal question, what does it mean to truly serve? Was it the scholar who gave up comfort for duty? Was it the general who risked his life for his homeland? Or was it the quiet boy in a distant village who dared to dream big in a world that told him to stay small? This question is not ancient, it's timeless. Even today, in our world of fast information and faster distractions, what do we really admire? Is it power, fame, wealth, or is it discipline, integrity, wisdom? The ancient path to power wasn't easy. It was filled with loss, hardship, even death. But those who walked it left something behind. They showed us that true greatness comes from within, from the hours no one sees, from the sacrifices no one applauds, from the quiet belief that serving others is the highest form of success. So maybe the real question isn't, can I become powerful? Maybe it's, can I become worthy? And that might just be the beginning of your own journey. But is that really the whole story?